Humanity in the search for power. Is there anything that truly goes together any better? Like bread and butter, because with more power comes more food. Sorry, I'm on a cut right now, and food is becoming a focal point in my life. Anyhow, as humanity would be exposed to a substance known as the elixir, it would then become apparent that not only could this make you more powerful and capable, but it also had some pretty abysmal drawbacks. A creature known as the Lone Wanderer would show up as what appears to be a cosmic substance dealer, I guess you could say, but it's probably not a cosmic substance dealer. It's probably from the planet of Embervale anyways, introduces humanity to it, and with that, our species would become immediately hooked. Which, as you know, once our brains start firing off dopamine in massive amounts, that's a fantastic thing for us and has no problems whatsoever. With humanity dead set on obtaining this material as much as it possibly could, we would do what we always do. Even more so now that we are hyped up on go-go juice. We would begin setting up elixir wells and mines in order to pull it out from the ground much more quickly. But with that would come at a fairly high price. At the point that pretty much the entire species was using it, more and more would be sought out as humanity would dig deeper and deeper into the planet, not learning anything from the dwarves and other stories apparently, to not dig too deep or too greedily. And as we did, war would immediately break out, which we would never do over resources, so that was like a 1 in a million off chance of happening. As entire nations would fall and others would rise, humanity attacked itself in order to control these mines and wells. And along with that, with each new nation conquered or people destroyed, those resources were now available to the victor. You know, as a treat. As these events continue to unfold, they just would not stop unfolding, and eventually a new threat would emerge that was unforeseen for pretty much everything on this world, but very likely a known problem for the Lone Wanderer, because I think that thing totally set us up. See, this is why you don't trust some weird alien-looking creature showing up to your planet, scratching its neck, asking if you got any more of that elixir. It just never works out. It became apparent that there were two major issues. First, the addiction with the elixir went well beyond just the actual lust for power. It became a very real and very physical addiction, so much so that those who continually utilized it would ultimately begin experiencing physical mutations depending on what area they were in, that would then, kind of just standardly, didn't matter the area, make them aggressive, grow larger than the average human being, and become more powerful, before ultimately forgetting that they were a part of Team Human in the first place, rather than what they would ultimately become. The second issue that arose was the haze that began to settle over low-lying areas in mines and cave systems, as well as in valleys. It became rather apparent quickly that what humanity was digging into appeared to be a bit of a trap. Whatever the Lone Wanderer is not a friend, but as I have pretty much set up, it's a dealer. It would entice our race with the power at first, much like a loot box or something like that, at a cost of our minds and the stability of our meat suits. In doing so, entire nations of humans were annihilated as they mined for this substance, releasing this cloud that would enshroud the entire area. He said it. Anyway, stepping into this cloud, it is absolutely lethal for humans. The issue would begin spreading outwards through human civilizations, which would then begin horrifically concerning another species that was currently sharing Embervale with humanity. See, this is why you can't have two species on a planet that are cognitively hyped beings. What isn't a problem for you may be a massive issue amongst another, which in turn, now you have to deal with it. This is like coexisting with Europeans on this planet. They create a bunch of crap, and the United States has to deal with it. Which, you know, things may have changed recently, but it doesn't really matter. A species much older than humanity would begin to take note of this blossoming concerning problem that the younger species just seem to have been starting out is dealing with. The ancients seem to understand the issue more intrinsically than humanity did, as they would now be drawn into the Enshrouded incident. Seeing humans get absolutely bodied by breathing in the tainted air just prior to the collapse of civilization, they would step in and create the Flameborn. The ancients did not rely on this elixir in order to further themselves. They instead had already chosen a different path, probably in ancient times, given how, old they are, to essentially connect themselves to what is known as the Flame. After witnessing the absolute stupidity of humanity, big F's in the chat on that one, some ancients would attempt to help humanity, while the older ones basically said, nah, not really our problem. The Flameborn would be created in response. These are essentially humans that are imbued with the power of the flame, rather than those who were seeking out the elixir, because really what it came down to is humanity just wanted to be goated chads. It's not a perfect protection. Flameborn can still absolutely be overwhelmed when the Enshrouded is around them for too long. However, the protection it offers is undeniable. So, with you all caught up, I think the best way forward is to first discuss the game itself, which is Enshrouded, before moving on to the actual haze, what that is, and why it's just a trap by a third being on the planet that is not exactly a hominid, before moving on to the actual mutations themselves. So, let's get to it. But before we get too deep into this, there is a summer Steam sale going on right now. Normally it is $29.99, but right now until July 9th, starting the 25th of June, you can actually get this game for $23.99 on sale. But again, this will be the last chance that you can actually get this game at this price. I had a lot of fun with it, and personally, I think that it is worth that price, so you should definitely check it out. And to check it out, all you have to do is go to the link in the description, and then boom, you can go get it. It's so easy. It's so simple. Why not do it? Being awoken in a vault of sorts, good thing bro's apparently doing crunches in there because it's all no shirt, no shoes, complete service to the flame. Exiting the pod, it's unclear how long you've actually been out or what the collapse has done to the world. As you move through the environment, it becomes apparent rather quickly, if you play on single player, everyone is gone. However, given this is a sponsored video, it's important for me to get across to you that the game is in fact multiplayer, and it's pretty gigantic. Like, there's whole community worlds. In fact, I played it for a few hours over the last couple of days, kind of getting my footing. Has actually been really fun. There's a community, again, community worlds like the Shire and Hogwarts and stuff that you can continue your campaign in supporting what is basically a magical dare program with others. Don't do Elixir, not even once. But we will get to that stuff as we move through. Exploring just past your pod, you'll find a rusty sword, which is one of the few means you have at your disposal for defending yourself. That's when you spot it. Further down into the cave system, a hazy area has begun to build up, which, given it's underground, tracks perfectly for the organism we are talking about. This is an old elixir mining area. On the walls, fungal stalks have grown, producing bioluminescence as well as releasing a pretty stout spore cloud, which is going to be foundational to the issues humanity is currently experiencing, or at least what's left of humanity. Coming across the first mutated, they're hunched over with a head likely not so much in control anymore. Really, it's just used for its sensory effects, specifically the brain. Immediately becoming aggressive to you, they begin their attack, which if you aren't careful, they will just straight up wreck your shit. As you fight your way through, you can only spend a very limited time frame within the Shroud. These spores are highly toxic to humanity, and given it has already mutated those who were down there, their fate could become your own if you don't, leave the area immediately before your timer runs out. The flame is great and all, but it can only protect your delicate alveolar sacs for so long. As you exit the world, or at least this area in general, you are met with an absolute massive playable area. I did not know how large this game was actually going to be when I went out there the first time. It's huge. Descending from the mines into Embervale proper, it becomes apparent that there is nothing left of society except for ancient spires in the distance that were erected long ago. Building your first base becomes vitally important, which is really the perfect time to bring it up. It is a survival game, if you haven't concluded that, which I'm pretty sure you have at this point. Running around, grabbing resources, crafting materials for your fight against the infected is rather important. Unless you want to get totally shreked like I did the first couple of times. Crafting extremely rudimentary materials, like some threadbare shirts and shoes, so you can actually stay warm for more than 3 seconds, along with a crappy wooden shield. I mean, what did you expect? You're no blacksmith, which is where the absolute hoss comes into play. Getting the flames lit, it begins speaking to you, which, I mean, the cleansing flame is supposedly good, so you don't have to worry about it. Humanity has never been tricked in this game before, immediately sending you down to the lower valley that is completely obscured by the Shroud at the flame's behest. I mean, it's supposed to be good, so don't worry about it. You are tasked with waking up another survivor who, as stated, he is simply known as Blacksmith, or as I call him, Blacksmith Haas. By the way, the flame is supposed to be good. I'm just kind of making a joke there. This is where we really begin to see the effects of the corruption itself. As you enter this area, insects have grown to monstrous sizes and patrol the deep fog. The trees that were in this area have been turned into what is known as Shroudwood, which is, they're basically just infected. And in areas where towers used to be and keeps existed, they are now going to be long gone and relics of the past, indicating a species that could build was here and is now mostly gone. And you'll find what's left of them all over, as the whole place is littered with skeletons. However, more concerning are the patrols that are moving through. Known as the Fel, these are much more powerful than the ones that you have found within the actual cave systems earlier. Avoiding them, you begin heading up into the mountains, where you come across the mid-step of this infection. These are known as the Scavengers. They're essentially what's left of humanity driven insane by the elixir usage, which we're going to talk about, and they will attack any other human on sight who do not appear to be afflicted. What I find interesting about this is it's a very clear hive mind effect that is taking place. Those who are mutated into the Fel themselves work together, and those who are currently dealing with the infection but are still somewhat human are still going to be aggressive to those not infected, but they are beginning to show mutations themselves. We're getting those physical mutations here in the science section of the video. Also, if you hear a beeping noise in the background, my neighbor's getting their trees cut down, so hopefully you can't hear that, but you might. Anyways, fighting past them and definitely not dying to them like I did, you awaken the Haas. Heading back to your only source of safety, which is your base, which you probably haven't built anything yet. Another behavior to note about the Fel is they are confined to the Shroud in the day, but at night they can come up closer to camps, seeking out others who may not have been infected yet, and then drag them back to the spore areas. This is likely how most of these people were actually infected. So, there appears to be a behavioral predisposition which fungi actually already displays, which is seeking more moist environments that may be warmer, possibly even a little cooler, in which to grow away from the drying impacts of the sun. As the Haas is summoned, this is what I found to be the main point of the game, building bases and keeping your survivors happy. Crap, which, give them a bed, basically, and a roof. Crafting materials for the build, there are several ways in which to proceed, piece by piece or entire slabs. Once you get the hang of it, actually, this building process is pretty reminiscent of other block build games, which makes it highly intuitive to create the layout that you want. But again, you're going to have to go get those resources. Crafting tools is necessary for your survival, such as pickaxes, better swords, armors, bows. All of this is available to you because the Haas has been awoken. However, you know what the real benefit is? You can get a freaking glider once you wake this dude up. Do you understand how useful this thing is in the environment? This isn't like some oh, you already completed the whole game, so now you can move around faster. This is craftable as soon as the Haas is up and ready to start blacksmithing, and you're about to use it in all its glory. Once crafting what I affectionately call the meat hook, or the grappling hook if you want to look at it that way, you are then sent up to a spire in the distance. Ascending to the very top, to complete the mission, you become tasked with other necessities to begin fighting back the Shroud. In this instance, obtaining sparks. As you keep fighting, obviously, you're going to be gaining experience along the way because that is the whole point, besides building. I didn't realize it at first, but the actual talent tree that they have has you section off into several different classes, as with most survival games. You could choose some lower aspect. Look, I'm not going to say it's cringe if you choose magic, but human knight is all I'm saying. Anyways, you could be like a wizard or some weirdly acrobatic dude, or you can join the Giga Chads and go the Guardian class, with maybe even some dabbling in as a warrior. This ensures you are actually useful and can be a tank, because muscles don't run out of mana. Which is perfect because, again, as mentioned, this isn't a single-player game. I mean, you could make it a single-player game if you really want to, but you can also team up with other people and share your adventure in other worlds. You're joining a community of people all pushing back the Shroud, and someone has to protect the nerds who chose the Wizard class. Healers are goated, though. They always have been, but if we wipe the group, it is always the healer's fault, not the tank's. You just need to get better at healing. I don't make the rules, I just work here. So as you pick your stats to enjoy your newfound strength, you jump from the spire and then glide like a ridiculous distance well over the Shroud, bypassing all of that nonsense below. It's super satisfying, and as you land, you're now tasked with what is affectionately known as a boss fight later on. Descending deep into a mine, you come across one of these monstrosities. It looks like a person completely mutated and twisted by the elixir, and then subsequently the spores, but I'm not so sure. Standing double your height, it is a human form pushed to its absolute maximum, biologically speaking, if it is in fact human. So let's discuss that for a moment, because kiting this thing was the best decision I ever made. Coming around the corner, this creature stands at likely about 9 to 10 feet tall. That's about 3 to 3.2 meters tall in heathen units. Structurally, it is bipedal, but what I find interesting about it is I haven't placed it yet if this is human or possibly an ancient that was corrupted. While it appears somewhat human, undeniably, it does also show to be similar in height to what an ancient is. There are some clear similarities between humans and ancients anyhow, so bit difficult. And also, though the Fel are mutated humans, so it's like the osteoclast and osteoblast of this creature could have gotten into play depending on the fungal behest, but I'm not 100% sure. As we continue to look at him, we see he is actually going to have the fungal fruiting bodies growing out of his legs, chest, arms, but most importantly, the head. The face has sunken in, exposing the teeth, as the eyes now produce the same bioluminescence that the fungal stalks also produce, which shows us what's very likely happening internally. Normally, fungi would love to colonize your body. Your lungs are the perfect breeding ground for it, moist, warm, and full of nutrients. The saving grace here is that with every breath you draw in, it's going to actually contain, your lungs contain macrophages that patrol them, which is why we don't get constant infections. In doing so, they make sure that whatever a spore is doing within your lungs, it cannot take root before it is then engulfed and broken down. However, what is clear with the Shroud is that this rapidly overwhelms the immune system, but there may be more to it than just that. So I see a few things happening here. First, even with the Flameborn, which are more engineered than born, they are only resistant to the Shroud itself. They have more time, but the amount of spores being breathed in eventually overwhelms them. This being the case with a normal human who's not imbued with this magical resistance, the Shroud is immediately toxic to humanity, likely resulting in a rapid takeover of the body. It is unconfirmed so far if the elixir actually affects the immune system in this capacity, as far as allowing the Shroud to take over, but what I do see is the elixir itself will neurologically affect humans. It seems as though when imbibing the elixir, neurological degradation is all but secured over time. While you're more powerful than average, I guess, or more powerful than the average human, your brain structurally begins to be degraded. This effect, while getting you hooked, may either cause you to purposely walk into the Shroud, sealing your fate, or cause an accidental exposure because you're not thinking about it. And given you are just human, it likely does not take long after breathing in the spores in order to begin mutating. Concerning the Thunder Brute that you have to fight, again, not 100% sure if this is a corrupted human or a corrupted ancient, but given its height, I'm inclined to believe a corrupted ancient. It is currently guarding something just behind it. After fighting it and not dying at all, because why would you record that, you then move behind it and find the real problem for pretty much every other creature on this planet. A fungal stalk, which appears to be the actual species currently afflicting this planet, has to be destroyed. Striking it down, it immediately clears the area of all spore production, which in turn makes the area safe to traverse if you just want to hang out down there. This is the species of fungus that has led to the collapse of humanity. But how exactly does it work? This, as always, will be speculative biology, given that we don't have the exact lore information, but once entering the lungs of a human, it will then enter the alveolar sacs, will diffuse through the tissues. Upon completely doing this, it will then enter the pulmonary vein and then travel to the heart. But the other entry point is also fairly concerning. Once breathing through your nose, it will actually access the critically delicate area of the human nasal passage at the top called the olfactory epithelium. Nerve clusters exist here that then run into the olfactory bulb, which is used for smell deciphering. Upon entering this area, which it very likely does, it will then head to the frontal lobe of the brain. What we have at this point is a full-scale invasion of the body. The immune system would galvanize to deal with the problem, but the fungus is in the bloodstream as well as in the brain. The innate immune system would be rapidly overwhelmed at this point. Their cells, they get tired. The macrophages would destroy likely a lot of the Shroud spores in the body, but given you are in the spore cloud, this is a losing battle, as you do have to breathe. As the time ticks by, the foothold is too strong, and the adaptive immune system cannot activate in time to produce the antibodies quickly enough to attack the spores to start taking them down. Not to mention, your brain is what is known as an immune privileged site. This is because for the brain to exist as it does, it cannot constantly be dealing with the destructive effects of the immune system when handling an infection. This is not to say that there is not any immunological activity in the brain. There is some, but it's very likely going to be kind of low level. And this is why things like Naegleria fowleri or the brain-eating amoeba can actually set up shop in the brain and eat your neurons, because while the neutrophils give it their best shot to attack them, they cannot pursue and put as much pressure on the amoeba needed to destroy it, which, as a result, it's going to overwhelm the brain. Now, the body can do something really, really stupid by our medical standards, with the brain infected and the Shroud spores becoming the fungal mycelium, which basically, you can kind of think of those as fungal roots. The meninges surrounding the brain can swell. This puts pressure on the brain to hopefully kill whatever's in the brain, but the fungus probably does not care. Instead, it just damages your brain. Because you are now brain damaged and in the Shroud still breathing this stuff, this leads to the next issue known as the cytokine storm, and this is immune response basically going to release every pro-inflammatory hormone and chemical in your body in order as a last-ditch attempt to save yourself from the pathogen. This is that meme with a puppy holding up the can of propane saying, if I lose, we all lose. That's literally what your immune system is doing. However, it's never going to be as useful, and this just puts you in more dire straits, and this would basically take you out of the game as you succumb inside of the Shroud. All the while, the fungus is still growing within your meat suit. This is not the end of you, however, as we can see. As you are brain damaged, eventually something else takes over, which is the fungus itself, interacting with the nervous system and then spreads out throughout the brain, while inducing physical mutations by altering the genome of your cells through hormonal influence. Either that, or it is just simply tapping into the cytoplasm, producing the proteins that it needs, and ignoring the others that your body would normally like to produce. This will cause your skin to turn a bluish color, as obviously probably the fungus is going to be robbing your body of nutrients, which means less blood flow to the surface of your cell, like your skin cells, which means less oxygen, and most fat reserves are going to disappear. And those in the Shroud, again, because of like the brain damage that clearly exists, this has not only affected your primary motor cortex, but also the cerebellum used for coordination. They will then move in a cumbersome way, hunched over, driven by the fungus in order to continue spreading. Becoming immediately aggressive to anyone in the area, it's likely going to work along the lines of the retina detecting movement, moving through the optic nerve, which is going to actually be intertwined with the fungal mycelium, and with that, it's going to hit the occipital lobe, and this will just further alert the fungus to your presence. What I do find interesting, however, is enough of the brain is spared for baser movements and situational awareness to actually remain functional. So the sensory neurons that you have reporting to the brain, those areas appear to be spared. This allows for them to swing swords, fire bows, and in general counter the flameborn if you are not careful or tanked out like an absolute Chad, which is the best class. This means enough of the brain is functional, but likely the frontal lobe has been completely destroyed, and the fungus is directly influencing the body, which brings up an interesting point. Is the fungus aware? I believe it is based on several context clues. While Enshrouded has had several updates adding to the story, the visuals, the gameplay, with actually the 1.0 full launch coming later this year, which of course there's a massive sale going on with it that lasts from June 29th to July 9th, so pick it up. I believe the fungal stalks are actually sentient, if not sapient. The Lone Wanderer is a dealer through and through, but where it comes from and where it went is a bit of a mystery. I think it could be mimicry at its finest. In nature, mimicry is when one species literally mimics another, either for protection or for hunting. Usually protection, like a coral snake versus a scarlet king snake. Red touches yellow, which is the coral snake, kill a fellow. Red touches black, which is going to be the scarlet king snake, venom lack. Or a specific species of fish using their tongue as like a worm-like appendage, so it's essentially bait to trick another fish into getting close to their mouth so that they can then eat it. Or the accursed anglerfish, using light in order to attract fish in the deep sea. I wish mimicry never existed for this exact reason, so that an anglerfish could just starve and go away permanently. To think I have to share a planet with these things, disgusting. Nuke the ocean is all I'm saying. Like, we could be rid of this problem immediately. Also, somebody asked, what horrific event in my life happened for me to hate the anglerfish? Basically, when I was a youngling, I was in water and something was swimming around my legs. It was basically dark water. Something ran into my legs, freaked me out. Also, learned recently my brother is afraid of the ocean too. I'm not. I can get on ships and stuff like that and not be afraid. He doesn't even get on ships, so I believe he was out there with me, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyways, that doesn't necessarily have to do with an anglerfish, but headcanon says it was that, because then I saw a picture of an anglerfish one time. I was like, wow, that thing sucks. Anyhow, crash out aside, if the fungus is sapient, which even the electrical activity of the fungus, you can actually think of each individual stalk sort of like its own neuron to a degree. They're all communicating electrically through the mycelium, and with enough communication, much like the human brain, it appears as though eventually consciousness may have been reached. Because ask yourself this, neurologically speaking, at what point do we become conscious? You know, there are bigger brains out there than our brains, yet our brains are conscious, like sapient, not just sentient. For a fungus to want to do this, I believe sapience must be reached. So, I'd have to assume, given the depth and expansiveness of the fungi down in the planet, much like the locusts on Sarah and Gears of War, the planet's crust is probably honeycombed with the fungus, meaning that it is everywhere and it is continually communicating with itself. At some point on Embervale, when the fungi became sapient, it became aware of the other species on the surface. I mean, if two sapient species can form on the same planet, then why not a third? It's just not bipedal. In order to associate with these species, the Lone Wanderer was created out of the fungi and then sent up in order to interact with the younger of the two species, because we were the dumb ones. Mostly because the ancients already appeared to be naturally able to counter the fungi with the flame, which, I mean, it burns fungus, right? Humanity, on the other hand, was perfect as a target. We didn't have the flame, and we really had no way to counter it apart from immune systems. Offering power to these humans, it was a trap in order for us to dig down and then expose the fungus. The reason that it may not actually come up on its own is because the sun is very damaging to the fungus, because it could dry it out and then take it out. So this involves prior planning by the fungal species, so the Wanderer is not some alien doing the fungal bidding. I believe it is the fungus itself. Upon escaping, civilization then collapses, and the last survivors are attempting to push back the Shroud from consuming the entire planet and everything on it. Which again, That involves you working with others, leveling up your character, unlocking new abilities, and finding the highest point in the game in which to glide from, because this is actually a pretty sick feature. And given it has 50 to 70 hours of game time with over 5.2 million units sold so far, I mean, originally I played it to just get the footage I needed, but I think I'm just going to keep playing it because A, I'm a sucker for grinding for gear, and B, I'm interested to see if the hypothesis that I've come up with for this video are actually going to be the things that this continues to turn out to be. So the sale of this game, again, is going on now from 25th of June, 2026 to July 9th, 2026. So if you want to support Enshrouded and then subsequently this channel, then please go check them out. They're on Steam. That's where I download it. So far, I'm having a lot of fun playing it, like playing through the game, and I imagine you will as well. But anyhow, I'm going to wrap things up there. If you enjoyed, then please leave a like, as it helps get the video out there. And also, commenting is pretty cool. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Instagram links down in the description. And speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the Astronaut tier, we have Army and Kusen. Thank you guys for your awesome continued support. Absolute ballers. At the Astrophysicist tier, we have Death Dancer, Webitron Supreme, and Commander Bothael. Thank you guys as well. And in the Scientist tier, we have Some Big Nerd, Metric System, Invictus Echo, Official Texan, SSJ4 Lotus, and Gina Elaine. Thank you guys. And to the rest of my patrons, I really do appreciate y'all's support. You don't even have to do it, but you do it anyway, so it keeps the cats fed, lights on, water running, all that stuff, so it's greatly appreciated. All right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.